Greetings and salutations, guys. I'm here with my review of Toy Story 5, has the longest running Pixar franchise, the one that started it all for them on the feature film side, returns with another installment 31 years later. This one kicks off with Bonnie, the little girl who currently owns the toys, receiving Lily Pad, her first ever big tech device, a tablet that she becomes very obsessed with, that she is spending most of her time with, not just to the chagrin of the toys, but really sort of starting an existential crisis for them, but especially for Jessie, who fears that she is going to stop playing with them altogether. I found Toy Story 5 to be another great installment for this series. Look, it's coming off the fourth one, which was probably the least well received. Honestly, I think the fourth one is fine. I think it's a good movie in and of itself, and it's a good family movie. It's a good animated movie, but it had a couple of things that did sort of definitely hold it down compared to the rest of the series. One is it just wasn't as good as the other three. It just didn't quite have the same amount of heart and everything that sort of makes those movies work, but also was the fact that it even existed at all, because a lot of adult fans felt like, hey, Toy Story 3 was such a perfect ending to the series. Why even make more? So if you are going to make more, you kind of had to really hit a home run, and they didn't hit a home run with Toy Story 4. They made a movie that was fine, but it didn't stand out enough. I think Toy Story 5, though, is a real return to form. I don't know if it's better than any of the previous movies, and maybe people will still rank them with Toy Story 5, coming below the original trilogy, but I think it still stands very proud with those movies. It still really captures the spark of those movies, and I think it justifies its existence with having a different kind of focus. And first and foremost is the fact that the movie really is about Jessie. Jessie was introduced in Toy Story 2. She's been a big part of the series ever since, but she really is the main character here. It's the first time that Woody and Buzz are very much supporting characters to someone else's story, but I think it really works. It's a shift that doesn't come out of nowhere because, again, it's not like she was a minor character. And also, I think at this point in the franchise, it really makes sense to shift things like this and to do something different with the series. And what they do here with Jessie, I think, works really well. And the fact that this situation kind of opens up some PTSD for her. Her backstory in Toy Story 2 is very relevant here. And in some ways, this feels like a sequel to Toy Story 2, just from Jessie's perspective, kind of picking up with what that movie gave us about her and how she's sort of feeling all that again about the fact that she has abandonment issues and the fact that she's been abandoned before. And now she thinks maybe it could happen again with Bonnie, as she's seeing this shift in Bonnie and desperately doesn't want this shift to happen. And yeah, Toy Story 3 already had sort of what happened with Andy and him getting older, but I think that the sort of specific look at Jessie and her psyche do make this feel different. And another big difference here that I think works really well is that Bonnie is very much a focus as well. I mean, Bonnie in some ways is the secondary lead of this movie. In previous Toy Story movies, whether it was Andy or Bonnie, we got some of their stuff going on and some of what they, maybe Toy Story 3 even the most with Andy has, going off to college. But here, a lot of the story is about Bonnie and the fact that she's getting a little older. She doesn't have an easy time making friends. She's very shy and kind of where she is in her life and how Lily Pad feels like maybe the help she's been needing to find friends. But what does that really mean for her? I think ultimately this movie has some great messages, and you could make it a really dismissive one and say it's about the power of friendship, but it's more nuanced than that because this movie is about, finding friends and how important that can be, but also maybe finding the right friends. And if you're a little weird and if you're a little quirky, maybe you can find your fellow weirdo. And I think that there's something really fun, sweet about that, and it's a good message for kids who might not always feel like they are, the normal one and what that means for them. And I also think that there is also this idea of the fact that, your time with someone matters. And even if that time ends, it doesn't mean that you meant nothing to them. This is all heady subjects. It's done with in a light, way that is very open and accessible for children, I feel. But there are always themes in Pixar movies, and there are always themes in the Toy Story movies. And I think that the ones that are here, I think, work really well. And I thought there's a big sweetness to them. And I know, I guess with the Bonnie thing, some people might say, hey, this is Toy Story. Why are we spending a lot of time with the kid here? But it's all, it all connects to each other because Jessie wants what's best for Bonnie, but then she's also worried about how she can fit into all this. And so their stories really mirror each other. and what they're both going through and the struggles she's having Jessie to both help Bonnie move forward, but also not lose her significance to Bonnie. And I think that really plays well with the two characters and their sort of parallel stories as this is all going. Now, what does this mean for Woody and Buzz? They are supporting characters here, like I mentioned, but they're great supporting characters. They're great characters, and they end up on their own quest to find Jessie. Look, in classic Toy Story fashion, there always got to be the characters get lost, separated, they have to make their way back home. It's just that this time it's Jessie along with Bullseye who have that happen. And so Woody and Buzz are trying to find her. And there's really fun, great stuff with the two of them. I could also imagine this movie without Woody. It's funny to see that Andrew Stanton, who directed this movie and co-wrote it, talked about how the first draft didn't have Woody in it. Toy Story 4 gave Woody, an ending, like away from the main group of characters. So they do have to kind of, go out of their way to get Woody back at all for this story to happen. Is it necessary? I mean, personally speaking, watching this movie, I don't think it's necessary. I think this movie could have been just as entertaining and a great movie without Woody. On the other hand, I'm not mad he's in it. He's a great character, and there's some really fun stuff with him. And I also understand that the Disney Corporation and Pixar probably thought it was pretty damn necessary to get Woody in this movie and to have more Woody toys to sell off this movie. So I think he fits in fine. It's just funny to think about. Yeah, he didn't have to be here. With Buzz, there is a very funny subplot about a crate of other Buzz Lightyears, of newer model Buzz Lightyears that has crashed on an island, and their quest, and it first seems so disconnected from what's going on. It's just funny, surreal, strange stuff with this army of Buzz Lightyears. Inevitably it has to connect back to the main story. It does, and I think it does so in a very entertaining way. But I actually just like the weirdness of these little asides we do with them for quite a while we wait to see how it's going to connect. Computer animation, of course, has evolved so much since the first Toy Story. Pixar has evolved what they're doing. There's beautiful animation here. There's some stuff involving a horse, not Bullseye, but actual horse that I think looks so great. But there's a really fun stylistic touch they do here that they hadn't done in the previous movies, which is playtime, which is to say the imaginary scenarios. When we saw first Andy in the old movies and then Bonnie, when they would play with the toys and we'd see the fantasy idea of what's happening. This time it looks different. There's sort of this fuzziness to it. There's this different layer to it to make it look distinct. And I actually thought that was a great touch and something that I'm kind of on one hand I'm like, well, it's funny it took them so long to do this, but on the other hand, they've had plenty that they were evolving all along the way. And I think that it's great to add that here because it does just make it feel different and it adds an extra little fun edge to what's already a cool little moment in this movie when we get to go into, what's happening when kids play with toys and what they're thinking about with them. Our central returning voice cast are as great as always here, of course, including Tom Hanks and Tim Allen. They know exactly what they're doing as Woody and Buzz, and that continues here. And the wonderful Joan Cusack gets her time to shine here as the lead of this film. And look, does she, along with many of the other cast members, sound older now that they are older actors playing these characters? Yeah, I mean, you can hear the difference. The funny thing is, I think it actually works really well in this movie, particularly because, especially with Jessie and Woody, they talk about their age a lot. The fact that they are old toys in the reality of these movies. They're from the 1950s. In real life, these are characters from the 1990s, so they go back pretty good ways anyway. But yeah, these would be vintage antique toys in this movie. And there are some jokes and some funny lines about the fact that they're both, considered old and that, other toys insulting them and making jokes about them. But the fact that Joan Cusack sounds like an older woman, I don't know, it actually leans well into what the movie's about and about your perspective shift and about getting older in some ways. And I know that's so funny, these are movies about toys and at the same time it's Pixar, so they're going to make us face things about reality. But I think it does add something to it. I thought she was really great, as was everyone. One funny thing here though is I do feel like the all the other characters, the familiar toys for the most part, they don't have a lot to do, which often happens in these movies, but maybe even more so here. And I do feel as some of the actors have passed away and had to be replaced. Maybe they just don't want them to have to speak as much because maybe they don't want to remind you that it's a different, person playing Mr. Potato Head and Mrs. Potato Head now, so they only have a couple lines here and there. Amongst the new additions, Greta Lee is the central one here, has Lily Pad, and she is perfect. She has this sardonic delivery, this way of saying things in a very funny, dismissive way that perfectly suits this character who just kind of is a know-it-all in a major way because she's connected to the internet and she feels she does know it all. And that's how she comes off to Jessie. And I think Greta Lee plays that so well. On the writing side, I do think the character, like they have to resolve the innate issue of the fact that we live in our modern world. This movie is deciding to tackle tech and the impact it has on kids. But they have to do it in a way where it's like tech exists and kids have it. And we might have our feelings about that and what is the appropriate amount of time they should spend with it. But the movie has to resolve it within its own story. I think that they maybe do things a little quickly with where things go with Lily Pad and some shifts that occur I felt could have been built up a little better, even though I still like the character a lot. We also get some more simplistic, fun tech toys that Jessie encounters along the way, most notably Smarty Pants, voiced by the one and only Conan O'Brien, who is a toilet training device. He is great. I mean, as you'd expect Conan O'Brien to be, has a toilet training device. And he gets to play into one of those playtime sequences I mentioned earlier in a way that I think is great, and also gives a big nod to the actor who plays him in a much appreciated way if you're an adult fan watching this film. So yeah, I thought Toy Story 5 really delivers. I really like the journey it takes Jessie on. I like that while her story involves her having to deal with her past in a pretty direct way, it didn't do it in exactly the manner that I was expecting it to. I think there's a more predictable route they could have gone that I'm glad they didn't do. And instead, she has to, face the past, both in ways she doesn't want to, but in ways that I think work really well emotionally for the character, but also for the movie. Yeah, it's funny, it's sweet. It'll make you teary-eyed at points. It's classic Toy Story, I think. And yeah, the original trilogy will probably always stand on its own. But if they're going to keep making these things, and they're gonna, I want them to be as good as Toy Story 5. And this is what you want from a new Toy Story movie in 2026. I think is still a pretty damn high quality movie, and that's saying something considering how long this franchise has been around. So, Toy Story 5, of course, will be in theaters everywhere this weekend, and probably making all the money in theaters this weekend. But if you can like and subscribe, that would be great. Thanks a lot, guys.